Hey, what is up? And I just got done watching the episode 3 of the Loki series, and unfortunately, at least for me personally, it's kind of doing the same thing that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier did. I kind of thought maybe it was going to do more because it had a lot, I don't know, just the direction's going a little bit different than what I expected. Um, for example, so like this episode, not a whole lot happened. Like a lot happened in the first episode, and a lot happened in the second episode. But this episode really only clocks in at about like 36 minutes. So to me, it's like, blink and you miss it. Um, what happens is, so at the beginning, they teleport to the Time Bureau, right? The TVA. And they get there, and Loki's variant, which is later named Sylvie, that's what she goes by. So Sylvie is at the golden elevator, right? She's about to try and go meet the the timekeepers, I presume. And at the last second, kind of Loki comes in and he goes and gets his daggers, which is cool. So there are obviously definitely a few things that do happen, but they're just, to me, they're little, but they might come into play later. Pretty large later. So Loki gets his daggers. That's one thing. They have a little bit of a scuffle, and then Loki eventually teleports them out into a different disaster where in 2077 the planet is going to blow up. So they can be there and it won't be a problem. However, it's a terrible spot for him to teleport them to. So he teleports them, and basically what it is it kind of becomes like a buddy cop movie where they at first they don't get along. Then he actually gets the temp pad from her, and then the temp pad, right, runs out of juice. She's had it for all this time, never ran out of juice, but now it runs out of juice. So they now have to charge it, but the only way that they can charge it is basically they take over the arc, the arc that's actually leaving the planet, because again the planet's going to get destroyed. During this time, they have a little back and forth. At one point, she tries to enchant Loki, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, what are you doing? Like, they have a few funny moments. And basically what it is, obviously his mind's too strong, so she can't do that to him. They have a disagreement on, like, what tactics to use. And initially, she uses her tactic, which is, like, just brute force, and it doesn't work. And then he uses his magic and his little clever tricks against the same lady who they're trying to get some information from, and of course it doesn't work either. So they're both like, your stuff didn't work. But then the lady like tells them what they want to know, so it didn't matter. But that served a purpose. So they have to board the arc and use the arc to charge the temp pad. So what they have to do is they have to get on this train that's leaving towards the arc. So they go that way, and of course there's this long line, people trying to run away, and Loki's like, don't worry, girl, I got a plan. So what he does the usual prisoner thing, which is kind of funny because to me, there are some really nice callbacks to kind of like Thor and Loki's relationship, in my opinion. And so he dresses up, or magically changes his clothes, basically, or that's exactly what he does. He changes into a guard's uniform, and it's gonna take her onto the train. But the guy stops her, and he's like, "Yo, I need your tickets," and then she enchants him. So they work together. What? So they work together, and they get on the train. And while they're on the train, they have this nice little moment where they're kind of talking about just like, a little bit about themselves. Really, Loki tells more about himself than really we learn about Sylvie. But there we learn her name. We learn that she knew she was adopted. She didn't really know her mom. And then he's like, oh, go ahead and go to sleep, get some rest. And she's like, nah, you go to sleep, get some rest. And of course, it doesn't work. And she eventually does fall asleep. And when she wakes up, Loki got like hammered drunk, I'd say, and he's having a good time with everybody in the cabin. But one person is like, who is this person? So he goes and gets the security, the guards that are on the train, and then this fight ensues. And during this fight, Loki actually gets thrown out of the train, and then Sylvie's like, "Oh crap, I gotta go after him because he's got the temp pad." So she goes out there, and then they have this little second, like this little moment, and then we find out that he broke the temp pad. The temp pad was broke whenever he fell. So she gets mad for a second because she's like, "Ah, you just killed us," and he's like, "Well, what if we took over the Ark? What if we hijacked the Ark?" And she's like, "You know what? That's a plan." So they decide that they are going to go to where the Ark is and hijack that bad boy. So on their way, he gets her to tell her how she enchants people. Also, during that time, he finds out that all of the uh, Time Bureau agents are actually variants, but they don't know that. Because obviously they think they were created, at least Mobius, he thinks he was created for this purpose. So they don't know that they're variants. So that will definitely come into play later, I'd say. But right now, it's just a nice little piece of information that we put in the back there. Then, as he is, there's a beautiful display of Loki's magic throughout this episode. I will give him that. He stops a building from falling at one point. And of course, he's able to use his illusion tricks and things like that. He has pretty good moments. And then obviously there are moments where they team up. Now they're more so working as a team. They have to hijack, the Ark. So they're kind of having to fight the agents off to try and get to the Ark. But when they do that, the Ark gets blown up. So, yeah. That's it. That's the end of the episode. There's not a whole lot that happens, honestly. Like, it's a very, like, to me, it's a slow burn, like, episode in a way. Like, nothing happens. It's kind of, I don't know. I'm not saying, like, it was enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. I definitely enjoyed it. But not a whole lot happened this episode. It literally was a Loki and Sylvie focused. And, now they have a good little relationship, hopefully. At least, that's kind of what I think. And we'll see how that plays out later. It's, you definitely get to see the differences between the two and how they're different. But really, that's it. Not a whole lot happens in this episode. And honestly, like, that's where my disappointment comes from. I enjoyed the episode, and I'm still very excited for the show. It's not like I'm like, where are we going with this? No, I'm still very much into the show, and I definitely enjoy it. However, I was really hoping, we'd be getting like some Mobius and Loki like buddy cop stuff. Not Loki and Loki, which it's Sylvie, which makes a whole lot more sense because, earlier before I said that I was really hoping to see Tom Hiddleston across from Tom Hiddleston. Thought that would have been cool. But the way that this show seems to be going, that definitely wouldn't have worked out because they're definitely on the screen a lot with each other. So I'm not really sure how to go. Now, at least from what I took from it, the TVA, has a good idea, at least for now, that Loki and Sylvie are against each other because last they saw, they were fighting. Now that being said, it could definitely be different, and I'm not sure what they're going to do next. Hopefully, this time on this planet gets wrapped up, like, at the beginning of the next episode. Because we're only getting, like, this is basically, like, when you think about it, the length of a Marvel movie. Maybe, like, 2.5 hours. Maybe a little bit more, technically. Yeah, I'd say about 3 hours or so at the end of it. Because you have your opening credit. Each episode's about, like, 42, 43 minutes. And you got 3 minutes of credits, and then a little bit of a recap, and then 6 minutes of ending credits. So you don't really only get about like 30 minutes of story. And if they're doing like Falcon and Winter Soldier and only doing 6 episodes, we only have an hour and a half left of stopping Sylvie, letting the agents know that they're variants, and of course Mobius on a jet ski. It better happen. If it doesn't happen, that'll be the most major disappointment of this episode. I'm sorry, not episode, of the show. It'll be the biggest disappointment to me. Um, but again, hey, I enjoyed it. What did you think? Let me know in the comments down below how you felt about the episode. Did you enjoy it? You had a great time. It was pretty cool. It was all right. It slowed down for you. It's an improvement. Now, I mean, it was beautiful. This episode was definitely beautiful. There were great shots. There was the cinematography on point. The action was typical Marvel action. It looked good, but you have that shaky cam. It kind of was like this during the fight. I hate that. But other than that, it was pretty good. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Ciao.